Friday, Millbrook. Today, we're going to do something a little bit different, and I want to tell you a story about Jesus on a journey. So Jesus and his disciples, they were traveling. The disciples in the Bible, they're always going somewhere, heading from place to place, on rivers, through lakes, all sorts of traveling. So this particular day, they're traveling from Judea to Galilee, and this is kind of a long trip. And like how people are on any trip, we need a rest stop. So Jesus and the disciples stop in Samaria. Now, Samaria, it wasn't really a place that you'd want to stop, right? It's one of those places where you might say, let's make it to the next exit, or that rest area doesn't look the nicest or the cleanest, and you might want to pass through this kind of town, namely because of the cultural intensity between Jews and Samaritans. But they stop anyway on this journey, and the disciples go down into the town to get lunch, but not Jesus. Jesus stays to himself, which he does often, and he goes to a well. And while he's at the well, he comes upon a Samaritan woman. And Jesus starts a conversation with her. He says, "Please draw me some water from the well. I'm so thirsty." And the woman looks at Jesus. She's puzzled because she didn't want anyone to notice her. You see, to go to the well in the heat of the day in the sun, that's not a wise plan. People walk miles to get to the well. Often you do this at the very start of your day when it's coolest, but no, she goes in the middle of the day. And Jesus says, "Get me some water." And she says, "Sir, I'm a Samaritan. I can't give you, a Jewish man, water." And Jesus thinks about this, and Jesus, instead of dismissing her or saying, "You're right, you're unclean," instead he engages with her in a compassion-filled conversation. Jesus says, "If only you knew the living water that I could offer you." And now this is really confusing. One, she didn't expect to see anyone here, much less a Jew. And now he's talking to her about living water. What is this? So they engage in a conversation, and he says, "Go and get your husband and we'll talk more." And then she has to bashfully admit, "Well, I don't have a husband." But Jesus knew the answer to that question. He knew the answer all along, right? Because he's Jesus. So Jesus says, "You're right, because you've had several husbands." And that could be kind of insulting to hear, right? To see the truth reflected in that way. But in this case, Jesus, with all his knowledge, with all his wisdom, with all his compassion, sees this woman for more than what society saw her as. Jesus sees her as worthy of drinking the living water. So Jesus engages this conversation. He makes room for her. He listens to her, not with judgment. Imagine the freedom she must feel for someone to know a thing that is so embarrassing about you, but to not judge you. Instead, to make room, make space for you, make conversation, sitting together, these two seemingly different people. Suddenly it dawns on her. She says, "You must be the Lord. Surely you are the Messiah." And Jesus empowers her and tells her to go forth into her town to spread the word. So this woman who is so disliked by society, by this culture and this community, she is the one that gets to go back with this precious news of living water, to bear testimony to the goodness and grace and compassion of Jesus. The things I like about this story is that Jesus is this compassion-driven change maker. Not only did Jesus change this woman's life by offering her water, Jesus also made change in this community through the laity, through an unlikely person, through someone that might not have been thought of as anything special. Jesus is making change. This Samaritan woman is one of the first people to proclaim this part of the gospel. Of course, the gospel hasn't happened in full yet. But Jesus believes in us to carry the story, the ways that Jesus, through compassion, has changed and transformed your life. You can be like this woman at the well and spread this good news to others. And on the other side, you can be like Jesus and give a listening ear full of grace and compassion to people in our community who might be overlooked. How is God calling you to be a change maker in this way this week? Amen.